I don't want to call it a masterclass.
No?
This is the basics of the basics, right? This is what we're doing.
Yeah, like
Doing
deck
basic
building
stuff.
101, right? Yeah, I
Deck
believe.
building 101. It's the simplest thing we can do. It's how you start as a newer player, start putting together your own decks. And then there's a lot of words thrown to you that you cannot understand and you don't know. And then you have issues and then you lose and you don't understand why. And then everything is hard.
You said
But yeah,
deck building as something simple. Is it though? Is it though? I believe that's a big challenge for new players to the whole genre in general, wouldn't you say?
yeah, I think so. I think a lot of people like to brew stuff and then, you know, I feel like there's a certain amount of practice that you have to do before you like start getting good at deck building, start seeing the pieces that you can put together.
Right,
And
because
that's practice. And that practice for me was done in Hearthstone arena mode, right? Where you had to just pick cards all over and then eventually you had to start figuring out like stuff like curve and archetypes and modes and how the meta changes and what you're good at and what you're bad at. But yeah, so if
yeah.
we're starting with deck
Mm-hmm.
building, then I just want to start with like the intro of what is learning, because that's what we're talking about here. Like, how do you learn something? And that is generally one of the hardest topic, and there's so much research going on in different fields about what is learning. How do we do it? What is the best way? And then deck building, and we have three cases. They're super easy. It's various examples of the weekend ranked decks where we can see kind of what happens. And then we're going to draw some random hands for practice so we can see and get a feel of what our starting cards will be when we play. So we can see kind of what happens when we change different numbers to know the math behind this. Because that's kind of the thing, right? We want to know the math behind all this. So yeah, sadly, a lot of people think that you can learn by lectures. How do you think about that, Valdez?
It's good to have someone helping you, guiding your way in a certain topic that he or she has some experience. Though at some point you have to not only learn them, but also because learning something and starting using them, it's two different topics. So you have to start, executing on those learnings, and that is by mostly doing, right?
So yeah, so studies show that there is the single most brain-killing activity is lectures. Like people that do not do something, they do not learn something. So the only activity that has less brain activity in students than listening to a lecture is watching TV. And TV has at least it's relaxing and it's good for you that way. So lecture, I hate lectures. I try to avoid lectures. We try to be interactive, listen to chat if there's any questions. But yeah, John Dewey says learn by doing is the best way to go this, and that's the way it is in life. But I think we learn by social interaction because it's when you and I talk about things and we like discuss topics and we share ideas that we formulate them for ourselves and then create lasting memories. And right now there's like a protest movement that you cannot learn anything, but that's yes, bullshit, I think. But such are people. There's always a counter movement to everything, and science moves forward by contrasting these ideas from each other. And that's good, right? But yeah, then we're going to talk about today's main topic, which is deck building. And then I want to have like archetypes, win con, curve, and meta. Those are the 4 things I consider when I think about deck building. Archetype is maybe a hard word for newer players. Do you want to explain it, Valdez?
Well, basically, archetype is a summarization of the deck that has some features to it. So, for example, if you're talking about the bomb dragon archetype, that will then have you like a general summarization of what are the core cards, and then usually there are always some kind of substitutions, replacements. Everyone is trying to fine tune and have the best deck, but archetype summarizes, let's say, one type of deck with a word.
Yeah. So I see it as like classification, where we have like these trees where we branch out, and then you have like the aggro branch, the control branch, and then you can differentiate between different branches, and some intertwine and go together, and things are difficult. And as always, there's a word. Every player uses it differently, but in the end, we kind of understand each other anyway. So then, win con. What are we thinking are win cons? Because this is one of the most discussed Magic the Gathering terms.
Yeah, well, WinCon is something that a set of cards or a card, something that generally, when played, it wins you the game. So essentially, you want to have a win con in play. So no matter what happens, your goal is always to reach that. Is it some kind of combo? Is it some kind of strategy? Is it some kind of consecutive options have steadily built up by it? It's something that when played generates you a win.
Yeah, and it's shortened win condition, right? Because this is how you win. And then curve. What is the curve?
Well, basically, it's the flow of the game, or the flow of your turns follows the current resource pool that you get when starting a new turn. So something like that, along those lines, right?
I'm gonna call it an actual curve. It's how your deck looks
Okay.
from the mana perspective. And then the last word, meta. I hate meta because everyone uses it differently and it has so many meanings. What do you think this is in your mind?
Well, for me, meta means the most actual and trending picks that shape, let's say, the battlefield. So you have the archetypes, and then those archetypes shape the meta in some way, right?
Yeah. So, like, I think of it as what you can expect to face if you play like 10 games. You expect like 8 of those decks to be a part of the meta, like the most common decks you play against. That's how I think about it. But yeah, I read up on meta, and there are a lot of different definitions, and a lot of people define it differently. So then I want to talk about our first archetype. It is aggro. It is low to the ground. When someone says they have a card that is good aggro card, then it does a lot of damage per mana. There's also a thinking about how aggro is brain dead that I do not appreciate, because aggro has the most impactful decisions because they make early and they have to get over the finish line, right? And it is about murder. It is about killing your opponent, getting them dead first. This feels common to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you think about aggro in Gods Unchained, which decks are you thinking about?
Well, yeah, mostly the ones that have the potential to kill you as soon as possible. So, and yeah, they all definitely fall into these categories. Like, if you want, current examples, like like Agro War, that comes to my mind. That is currently in the meta.
Yeah.
But you have now others that fall into this category as well.
Agro War, Agro Light, Agro Deception, like all of them, they're just aggro and then a god, right? Because that's how we build decks in this game. So in Magic the Gathering, there's a bit of difference, and here's where I think like aggro is like this big branch, and then it branches into different types of decks. Where you have the Sue archetype, which is, do you know this?
Yeah, you want to go wide on the board, and that's the core to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Sue is named Sue because you take in all the different kinds of creatures, and then you just play the creatures with the best stats per mana on every step of the way. So then we have the second archetype, which is a tribe or a tribal deck. This is
Asking me a question. I'm also taking notes.
yeah, sure.
Tribe, definitely something related to one tribe. So, for example,
Yeah,
Olympians in those,
exactly. This is
or
Olympians. That is good. Burn.
Burn would be like the full smork face, or
Yeah. This is not very common in Gods Unchained, right? Because we don't really have the good burn spells, but I would say aggro magic, where they don't play minions, they just take spells, they point them face, and then they win, right?
yeah.
And then pure combo is usually designed as aggro. When we think of pure combo, I think of teachers. Like, it's a combo deck that can't interact with the board, so all it cares about is just getting the combo fast enough to where it kills the opponents before the opponents kill them. They spend all their mana on draw and just getting the combo up. And those are what I think of as the four, like, aggro archetypes. And mostly in Gods Unchained, it's Sue, right? Like, we mostly just play best statted minion. There is some tribe, very little burn, very little pure combo.
Right.
Feeling ready?
Yeah.
Do you think there's any archetype I've missed in aggro?
I don't know. I think it covers well. Yeah, I think it covers well. Yeah, midrange is something not under the aggro archetype, right?
Yeah, exactly. So then we have control. And this comes from Magic the Gathering, where you can just say no to your opponent over and over again, and they don't get to do things. It's an archetype that is just about resource management, and mainly resource management of the opponent, making sure they're not allowed to do things. They're not allowed to have fun. They're not allowed to do what they want to win, which is driven by counter spells. And here is, I think this is, yeah. And one then combo is one of the archetypes as well here, but it's a control combo. So what is a control combo to you?
Control combo. Well, I have no idea.
Okay. So Avatar of Magic Mysteries, right? They
I see.
control the
Yeah.
board, they control the board, they control board. And then on 8 mana, they kill you from 30 because they get there eventually, right?
Yeah. I have like 100 games with that archetype, and like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
don't know which category, like, or how to think about it. Yeah, it's cool.
And then here we have then also mid-range. Mid-range, it comes from boxing, where you have like close-up fighters, long-distance fighters, and then you have the mid-range fighters that can dance in the distance in between. So they're good against control because they can go in close and kill people. And they're good against like aggro because they can keep their distance, they can be slightly bigger, and they can hit people in the face. In Gods Unchained, there's a common complaint that mid-range is not a thing. And I don't know how I feel about that, because in my mind, there definitely is mid-range decks, right? And most of the cheap decks are mid-range decks. But yeah, how you should play a mid-range deck is dependent on your opponent, right? So if you're up against an aggro deck, then you just try to outlast them, right? And if you're up against a control deck, then you try to hit them hard and fast. When mid-range is really good in Magic the Gathering, it's because they just have the best cards. Like, they play a curve that is just the best card, the best card, the best card. And that is how they win. Midrange Magic also got number 12. Yeah. And that's the thing, right? Now we're talking about GU Deck's classification of midrange, which is just dependent on the curve. And hello, Blurker. Welcome, welcome.
Hey guys, welcome.
And then we also have mid combo, which is what I'm gonna say, like Arena Magic was a mid combo. Because it had some removal, but it didn't go the full control route. And then it had like a combo finish, right? So combo is hard and combo is difficult to classify because it's just combo, right? But how you get to the combo is what classifies it about where it is. So then, yeah, Lord Crew used control magic with teacher win con. Yeah, so that's a control combo, right? You play control and then eventually you win. So then we come to the concept of curve, which is very hard for newer players to understand what a curve is. But it's just the look of your deck and how many 1 drops, 2 drops, 3 drops, 4 drops, 5 drops, and so on you have in this. And this is very dependent how your curve should look. Depends on your game length, right? Because you want to, every turn, spend all your mana. That is the goal of the thing. We have mana, that's our resource. We have cards, those are also a resource. And we want to use our resources because when we use our resources, then we're better off against our opponent. So it's just a mathematical thing. And different decks should have different curves. Because different decks. Who is speaking? It's me, TBH. Welcome. You see me on the camera, right?
No, I changed the camera layout because
Okay.
our cameras are in the way, but we can appear.
Okay. No,
Yeah,
it's fine.
we can appear on the board. Yeah, we are here, guys. Hello. But if we're on the screen, like half of the presentation, like the text is covered.
Right there in
Yeah,
the one
Once
spot. Yeah.
we move out from this, then we'll be on screen. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all about game length, right? And then that's about card, because how much you value a card depends on how much mana you have to spend on your cards. So here on the right, I've made 4 different card archetypes where I want to talk about. And so we have a control deck that is in blue. Everyone can see it, right? Normally they play 2 1-drops, 8 2-drops, 3 4-drops, 4 4-drops, 4 5-drops, 4 6-drops, 4 7-drops, or something like that. That gives you the optimal chance to be able to spend your mana every turn until turn 12 or so. Because a control deck wants to play a longer game. But then a mid-range deck, for example, it skips the 7-drops and it shifts the mana further to the start so that they can have a more explosive start against control while still have enough cards in the end to be able to take out those pesky aggro decks. While an aggro deck just goes full on the start. They're in orange here. You can see their curve going like so. Because they are very starting. They are very heavy weighted towards the start because aggro has to have a good start. But then Amazons. I wanted to talk about Amazon specifically because this is something that is kind of overlooked when people build Amazon's decks. And this makes me a bit frustrated when I look at Amazon's deck. So when we look at this Amazon deck, can you think about why we have so many 5-drops in Amazons, which is an aggro deck?
I don't know. Tell us, TBH.
You don't know?
No, I'm not familiar with Amazons that much.
So Amazons is called something that is called a tribal deck, right? And they have a finisher, which means they want to finish the game with a card of a certain mana. So they want to build up a board, build it as big as possible, then play their finisher and win. So their game-winning cards, their win cons are 5 mana. But can you keep a 5 mana card in your mulligan?
No, you cannot.
So you have to mulligan them away, but then you still want to draw them, right? So you should have more 5-drops in your Amazon decks because they are the win con, and when you draw them, you win. And you have to draw them to win. So then you have to have more of them in your deck because you can't keep them in the mulligan, and you just need them. But yeah, then we come to the most important thing of all, the good card principle. Have you heard of the good card principle?
No, what is it all about?
Good decks are built by good cards. It's as simple as that.
Makes sense.
All these curves, all this mana, all this stuff, it doesn't matter in the end. What you need good cards to build a good deck. This is just guiding principles to help you build something where you can, average get your best draw to get as much things as possible. And something I want everyone to notice here is that almost all the decks should have 8 2-drops. Because that gives you the highest odds of getting the possible ways to not get behind in the early game to then snowball out of control. So you need a lot of 2-drops. And then we have cases. And I took this from the Weekend Ranked 2 weeks ago when we planned this first. So if we look here on the left, can you tell me, just from looking at the mana, can you tell me what deck this is?
An aggro.
An aggro deck, you say? With no 1-drops, you say it's an aggro deck. Okay. Then the middle one. Do you want to tell me what this is?
That's some kind of mid-range.
That's a mid-range. Okay. And then the third one. Can you tell me what this is?
That's looking like a control deck.
That looks like a control deck. Yeah. So the first one is Midrange Nature. Something to think about here is the lack of 1-drops, meaning they only have 2-drops that are like they aren't trying to go as aggressive, right? And then in the middle we have Hidden Deception, where we have 10 1-drops, which is crazy much. But they want to get up to an early start, right? So yeah, good on you, Godhands. You figured it out. So then what I use when I build my decks is that I just use geodex, and then I look at a deck, look at the curve, think about it, see how it fits, and then I draw some practice hands, right? Because that is the way I do this. So I was thinking now that we could do this here. So I go, this is of course just like a Magic the Gathering things, because there aren't enough tools in Gods Unchained to do this. But if we look at like top decks here, so normally I go to top decks, and then I look at something that is cheap, because that is who I am. And which deck speaks to you?
Let's go with some Guild Deception there, like a couple.
A
Good
Guild
options
Deception
there.
here?
Yeah.
Sure. So then we can just look here. They have 15 1-drops. So 15 1. We should go with 1. Then they have 8 2.
Wait, if
Then
you
they
could somehow
have.
manage to separately the cards and by their quantities, you could.
You can definitely do that as well.
Yeah.
So if you want to go, I didn't want to do this for chat, but you can copy these
Right.
like such, and then copy paste here, and you have to just remove things, right?
Yeah.
So we have 2 contact brokers, like such. We have 1 dark knives.
Nice
We have
tool.
1 makeshift shiv. We have 2 nightleaf trappers.
So this is also a good tool if you wanna gamble and test your luck in your winning numbers in the lotto next time, guys. So just use the big numbers principle and shuffle 1 million use cases, and then have a sample size, and then just cover the ones that had the most often. And yeah, easy.
No gambling allowed. Come on. No gambling allowed. We are not gamblers. We are traders.
No,
Trading's what we do.
but wait, TVH. It's a personal from personal experience. Like my father, like quick story time. My father won the lottery with this same principle. Instead, he just did it all manually. Telling you, like my parents won the lottery back in like the 80s, 90s.
We can also say that like it's kind of different now than it was before, right? Did the deck have 1 or 2? 1 Whisper Baron, and then neutral here. We have 2 encumbered looters and 2 Brutimari investigators. And now we can just shuffle and deal. And as I think about this, we see 3 cards first here. We have Umbral Arrow, Dark Knives, and Cutthroat, right? Then we mulligan Dark Knives, and then we get a Patient Pickpocket. Now you have Umbral Arrow, Cutthroat Insight, Patient Pickpocket. What would you pick to throw anything away?
Maybe the Cutthroat.
Cutthroat away, and then we have a Nightleaf Trapper. So then we have Patient Pickpocket, Nightleaf Trapper, and Umbral Arrow. Would you pick something away?
Well, I mean, it's okay. Like for example purposes, okay.
I would probably toss the Umbral Arrow myself, because I don't like having removal in an early deck. And then we have Patient Pickpocket, Nightleaf Trapper, and Makeshift Shiv. And that's what I would call an incredibly good hand. starting hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and then you can just shuffle and deal here. What I wanted to do was the slightly more like easy one, where we had
15-8 and
2,
4, 5 and
5-3. It was 4-2, right?
2, I believe.
2-2. 2-4. This is the way it was. Yes. Then we can see here, like, how common is it that you get double 1 and 2. Now, of course, this deck is incredibly heavily overskewed towards 1s, right? So it is incredible that this deck works. So why does this deck work, even though it has such a skewed mana curve? Can we see the card that makes this work?
Which one? Can
This
we see
deck.
it?
It has an incredible mana curve. What card makes it work?
Yeah, I'm also asking chat, like, if once, but is it because of the draw mechanic that the instigator
Yeah, that's the whole
triggers?
thing, right? This
Mhm.
deck builds on Fruntimari Investigator and its ability to draw 3, 4, 5 cards. Because a card has a mana value in itself, right? Drawing a card costs 1 mana. Drawing 2 cards costs 3 mana. So, like, most cards, just having a card costs a mana, more or less. So this drawing you a lot of cards means we can cheat on our curve and get it a lot lower. And this is just the good card principle. You just need good cards to build a deck. And that is what deck building is all about. So yeah. Now, to recap, we have talked about what learning is. We have talked about deck building from a basics, which is more or less just learning 4 words. We've looked at the cases. We've practiced. Hidden helps too to get value. Yeah. In this game, our curve is a bit different, right? Because we have mana powers, and that is all. We talked about the 4 core words that I normally talk about: win con, archetype, curve, and then the meta. How do we find the meta? By Geodex, right?
By using the resources available for
Yeah,
us.
Geodex tells us what the meta is. Right now, if you're building a deck, you should be good against Soul War and Ramp Magic, right? So if you build a deck, those are the 2 main parts that you should be good of. But they're only 30% of the meta, right? So 3 games out of 10, you should still face other things. And the meta is very like disjointed, and there's a lot of different decks that we have to play against in this game. But yeah, that was deck building. Is there something I haven't covered?
I think, or maybe with the next chapter, to share your principles of deck building, if that is
When
coming
I
along.
deck build. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, like to share like the general, or maybe your style, if you consider it, yeah, like your style. But yeah, we
My
covered, I
style
believe.
is good cards. That is
Yeah,
my
the good card principle. Okay.
that is all it is.
Yeah, I
But yeah,
think we covered everything, the theory, the knowledge part. Now it's time to learn by
so you
doing.
had a deck that you wanted to work on, right?
I did have. There is this Zurabi kid.
Yeah.
He introduced me to his list, and maybe we could work on it.